What if the man who claimed to love you was the one who broke you? Camille thought she was escaping heartbreak, until a devastating betrayal forced her into a marriage she never wanted, carrying a child she never planned for. Just when everything seemed lost, the one person she never expected stepped back into her life and offered her a second chance at love. Will she take it, or will the past destroy everything? Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful story like this one. Camille Arden never believed in fairy tales, not after the life she lived, raised in a modest apartment above a noisy laundromat, where her mother reminded her daily to never expect too much from life or from love. Yet there she was, on a dusty Texas ranch, engaged to a man she never imagined would one day call her his fiancé, Nolan Vestron. It had started with a letter, a thick yellowed envelope, handwritten in bold strokes, Camille Arden. Inside was a formal proposal, not for a book deal like she hoped, but for marriage, from Nolan Vestron, her former admirer, her former mistake, and most shockingly, the brother of Adrian Vestron, the man Camille had once thought she'd marry, the man she had once loved with every ounce of herself. 3 years ago, she'd met Adrian at a small publishing gala in Dallas. He was charming, intense, a civil engineer with dreams of becoming a police officer, a man willing to defy his father's legacy and chase his own fire. They fell fast. They planned slow. But everything changed the night Adrian left the ranch after a bitter fight with his father, Victor Vestron, who forbid him from becoming a cop. That night, Camille had stayed behind to collect her things, and Nolan, quiet, brooding Nolan, offered to drive her to the bus station. Instead, he kissed her, a rough, desperate kiss, and though she pulled away, the moment had never quite left her. She ran from both brothers then. Ran to the city, buried herself in writing, and tried to forget the feeling of being torn between two versions of the same legacy. Victor Vestron passed away suddenly that fall, just weeks after Adrian's departure. No one told Camille. She learned only when Nolan's letter arrived with the words, "My father is gone. The ranch needs you. I need you." What should have been the end of a tangled chapter became the reluctant beginning of a new one. Camille returned out of curiosity, or maybe guilt. And Nolan, ever composed, greeted her not as a ghost from the past, but as a partner. He had inherited the ranch, yes, but he wore the weight of the land, like a man dragging chains. He spoke of legacy, of duty, of healing what was broken. And in a moment of confusion or weakness, Camille said yes. The engagement was quiet, simple. The workers on the ranch whispered about it. Aunt Jolene, the cook, tried her best to smile for her. But Camille could feel the weight of something unfinished lingering in every hallway of the Vestron home. Adrian's room was still untouched. His old books still lined the shelf. The piano he played when bored still sat near the window, silent as ever. And despite the warmth Nolan offered, Camille never forgot what had happened. That kiss. That look in his eyes. She told herself she could overlook it, that she could build something stable with Nolan. After all, wasn't he the responsible one? The man who stayed behind, the one who grew the ranch profits by 50%, the one who kept the workers paid and the property thriving. But what good was stability when her heart still wondered where Adrian was? Every time Nolan touched her shoulder, she flinched. Every time he said, "We're doing the right thing," she questioned whose right it really was. Then came the letter, another envelope, but this time it was from Adrian. "I'm coming home," it read. "And I'm bringing someone I want you to meet. Her name is Camille." Her breath caught. Could he have meant someone else? Could he really have forgotten her? Nolan read the letter too. He didn't say anything when he saw her face go pale. He simply folded the paper, tucked it into his back pocket, and said, "Guess we'll have guests next week." Camille stood frozen on the porch, the wind tugging strands of hair from her braid, her chest a storm of dread and unresolved longing. Adrian was coming home, and with him, the truth. The moment Adrian Vestron stepped out of the truck and helped Camille down, it felt like the air around the ranch held its breath. Camille hadn't seen him in over 3 years, yet every detail of his face struck her like lightning. His strong jaw, slightly dusted with stubble, the stormy look in his eyes, tempered now by age and hardship. He wore a pair of fatigues and combat boots, sun-darkened and broad-shouldered, with that same stubborn fire burning beneath his quiet confidence. "Welcome back," Nolan said from the porch, arms crossed, voice steady but unreadable. He didn't blink when Adrian turned to look at him, the past hanging thick in the space between them. "Nice to see you, dear brother," Adrian replied, his tone cold, almost mocking. "Looks like you've done well, playing king of the ranch while I was away." Camille's heart hammered in her chest. She expected Nolan to retaliate, but he simply gave a slow nod, choosing silence instead. Her fingers tightened around her purse strap. She knew this was only the beginning. Inside, Aunt Jolene had prepared a welcoming meal, one Camille could hardly stomach. Adrian kept glancing around the house, asking questions, casually throwing out jabs. "Where's Dad?" he asked, finally halfway through dinner. The silence that followed was deafening. Camille could feel the blood drain from her face. Nolan looked at Aunt Jolene, but she stared at her plate, so he answered. "He passed away 1 month after you left." Adrian's fork froze midair. "What?" His voice was low but shaking. "And no one thought to tell me?" "I tried," Nolan replied calmly, "but you'd vanished. I couldn't reach you." Adrian slammed his hand down on the table, making the silverware jump. "You had money. You had lawyers. You had contacts. Don't give me that crap. You didn't want me back. That's the truth." Uncle Hank tried to intervene, but Adrian shot him a glare. Don't defend him. He already took everything from me. The ranch, Dad's favor. Now I come back and find out he's taken Camille too?" Camille's breath caught. The words pierced through her like knives. She wanted to speak, to explain, but Nolan beat her to it. "Camille's decisions are her own. Don't paint her like a victim." Adrian laughed bitterly. "Of course you'd say that. You always made things look clean when they were anything but." The room was spinning. Camille pushed back her chair and fled to the porch, gulping in the night air as if she'd been drowning. A few moments later, Adrian followed, quieter now, his expression torn. "Camille," he said gently, reaching for her arm. She pulled away. Don't do this right now." "You were supposed to be mine," he whispered. "You said you'd wait." "I did wait," she snapped. "But you left, Adrian. You walked out and never looked back." "I didn't know my father was dying," he said, anguish curling his voice. "And I didn't know you'd stop writing or calling. I didn't know if you were even alive." She turned toward him then, voice cracking. "What did you expect me to do?" He looked down. "I expected you to remember what we had." Behind them, the screen door creaked. Nolan stood at the threshold, arms folded. "If you're going to fight over her," he said, "at least do it somewhere that doesn't wake up the whole damn house." Adrian shot him a look of pure venom. "You always show up at the worst times, don't you? And you always think the world owes you," Nolan replied coolly. "Grow up." Adrian surged forward, but Camille stepped between them. "Enough," she cried. "This isn't helping anyone." The tension sizzled, but Adrian backed off, jaw tight. That night, the house was quiet, but no one truly slept. Camille lay awake in her room, replaying the scenes, her chest aching with guilt and confusion. Down the hall, Nolan sat alone in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. And in the guest room, Adrian stared at the ceiling, clutching the unopened letter his father had left behind. Still unopened, still unread. The past had returned, and with it, the war none of them had won. Camille didn't mean to overhear the voices outside her bedroom door, but the hallway carried every word like a whisper, meant for her heart alone. Adrian had raised his voice again, this time accusing Nolan of orchestrating their father's will. Nolan hadn't flinched. He never did. "Dad always favored you," Adrian said, his voice sharp, unrelenting. "Even in death, he handed you the ranch like I didn't exist." "He trusted me to manage it," Nolan said coolly. "You left. You chose to walk away." "I chose freedom," Adrian hissed. "You chose to be his puppet." Camille closed her eyes, the weight of the argument settling like dust on her skin. None of this was simple, not the inheritance, not the past, and certainly not what happened that night, 3 years ago, when everything unraveled. Back then, she'd returned to the ranch only to pack up her things and say goodbye. Adrian had begged her to wait, just a few more months while he proved to his father that he could make it on his own. Camille agreed. But Nolan had been there in the shadows, always there, offering her a ride, a shoulder, a final conversation that became something it never should have. She still remembered the pressure of his lips, uninvited, urgent, something in between apology and possession. She ran the next day, from both of them. But now, here she was again, and this time, trapped in something far more complicated. A marriage proposal from Nolan, yes, but more than that, a quiet war of wills. Camille had agreed out of confusion, loneliness, and a need to feel anchored. And Nolan, as if sensing her vulnerability, used it like a key. He'd changed in those 3 years. No longer the second son hiding behind silence, Nolan had grown into a man who made decisions without asking. He carried himself with a calm authority that made her forget, sometimes, the darkness in his eyes. Sometimes. The real fracture came during dinner that week. Camille had done her best to act the gracious hostess, but Adrian couldn't hold his tongue. "So tell me," he said, leaning back in his chair, "are you two really in love, or is this just a convenience? A ranch marriage, strategic, like Dad would have wanted?" Nolan set his fork down slowly, his face unreadable. Camille opened her mouth, but no words came. "That's enough," Aunt Jeline cut in, but Adrian laughed, bitter and reckless. "Of course, no answer. I wouldn't expect one." That night, rain poured hard against the windows. Camille stood by the pane, watching lightning split the sky. Her heart raced for reasons she couldn't name. She turned to find Nolan in the doorway, watching her silently. "You're not going to sleep?" he asked. "Not yet," she answered, hugging her arms. He stepped closer. "You're shaking." "It's cold," she lied. Nolan reached out, brushing her damp hair from her forehead. His touch was gentle, yet something in it made her stomach twist. She stepped back. "I'm fine." But Nolan wasn't done. He reached for her again, this time more insistently. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice tight. "I'm your fiancé," he murmured. "I'm allowed to care about you." Camille backed against the wall. "Don't mistake this arrangement for something it's not." "I haven't," he said, his voice low, "but maybe you have." And then it happened. A cloth. The smell of something chemical. Camille tried to scream, but it caught in her throat. The world blurred, colors swirling into black. When she woke up, her body ached. Her clothes were gone, and Nolan was lying beside her, asleep, one arm draped over her bare waist. Panic surged up her throat like bile. She clutched the blanket to her chest and slid off the bed, the truth crashing into her like thunder. He had taken what was never his. She dressed in silence, biting back a scream. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. Nolan stirred as she reached the door. "Where are you going?" he asked groggily. She didn't answer. Outside, rain still fell, but she didn't care. Camille ran, heart pounding, rage and fear propelling her forward. Lightning lit up the field and thunder roared as she disappeared into the storm. Behind her, Nolan's voice called her name, but she didn't stop. Not this time. The rain had turned the ground into a swamp by the time Nolan caught up with Camille. She had tripped over a root, mud splattered across her legs and hands, and when she tried to rise, her ankle gave way. She bit back a cry just as his arms scooped her up. "Don't touch me," she screamed, thrashing against him. Her fists pounded against his chest, her nails scratched at his neck, but he didn't let go. "You monster," she sobbed. "You drugged me. You forced yourself on me." "I didn't mean for it to happen like that," Nolan said, his voice thick with something that could have been remorse or madness. "But I love you, Camille. I love you so much it made me lose my head." "Love?" She spat the word like venom. "You violated me. You took everything from me." He carried her back to the ranch house despite her cries. Thunder cracked overhead as he pushed the door open with his shoulder and kicked it shut behind them. Camille struggled to her feet once he set her down, stumbling toward the stairs, her body trembling from exhaustion and shock. "I'll make it right," he said behind her. "I'll marry you. I'll give you everything. I'll—" "Don't you dare say another word," she snapped, spinning to face him at the base of the stairs. Her hair clung to her cheeks, rain still dripping from her chin. "You think I care about rings or vows after what you did? You think a wedding will fix this? I only want you to be mine. I was never yours." Her voice broke. "You were my mistake." Nolan's jaw tightened, but for once he said nothing. That night, Camille locked her door and pushed a chair beneath the handle. She didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the storm fade into the silence of early morning. The bruises on her wrist were dark now, her muscles sore. But worse than the physical pain was the echo in her chest, the hollow where trust used to live. The next morning, she made her decision. She would leave. Somehow. But when she stepped into the hallway, Aunt Jolene was already waiting with a steaming cup of tea and a worried gaze. "Child," she said softly, "I saw the state you were in last night. I know something happened, and I want you to know. You don't have to stay." Camille burst into tears. It was the first kindness she'd been shown in days. Jolene wrapped her in a motherly hug, the warmth of it undoing every bit of strength Camille had tried to summon. "I want to go," Camille whispered. "Today. I need to get out of here before I lose myself completely." "I'll help you," Jolene nodded. "But you should at least say goodbye to Adrian. He deserves that much." Camille hesitated. Adrian. God, how would he ever understand? How could she ever look him in the eye again? Jolene pressed a small parcel into her hand. "I packed your things. Raul will drive you to the highway." By afternoon, she was ready. A duffel bag slung over her shoulder, her typewriter case in one hand. But just as she stepped into the hallway, the front door opened and there stood Adrian. He froze, eyes scanning her face. "Where are you going?" he asked, setting his bag down. Camille opened her mouth but no words came. She couldn't tell him. "Not like this. I just need some space," she said finally. "Time to think." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "What happened?" She looked down. "Nothing I want to talk about." "Camille." He reached for her but she stepped back. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I can't stay here anymore." Adrian's face crumpled. "Is it because of Nolan? Did he—" He stopped himself, then grabbed her shoulders gently. "Tell me the truth." Camille's voice trembled. "It's not something you can fix." He looked like he wanted to argue, but then his hand dropped. "Where will you go?" "Back to the city," she said. "I'll figure the rest out." Adrian stood there watching her go, pain etched into every line of his face. He didn't chase after her, didn't demand answers. He just whispered, "Be safe, Camille." She nodded once, then stepped into the rain again, this time without looking back. Camille had been back in the city for 2 weeks, but her heart still beat to the rhythm of ranch winds and pine-scented silence. She tried to lose herself in her writing, throwing herself into her latest manuscript, but her mind wandered too often. Toward the past, toward Adrian, toward the man who hadn't stopped her from leaving, but had looked at her as if his world had come undone. She missed him. God, she missed him. And worse, she missed the ranch, the wide fields, the warm mornings, the sound of boots on gravel, of laughter echoing from the barn. But most of all, she missed who she had been before everything broke. Before Nolan. And now there was something else. The pregnancy test sat on the edge of her bathroom sink, faint, unmistakable. Camille stared at it, her mouth dry, her fingers trembling. It had been 3 days since her suspicions started, her body betraying its own secrets. Nausea in the mornings, a tightness in her chest, the way even the smell of coffee made her stomach roll. She wasn't ready. She didn't know what to do. And worst of all, she didn't even know how to feel. Was it Nolan's child? That thought made her stomach twist with shame. She clutched the edge of the sink, forcing herself to breathe. Later that day, at her publisher's office, Camille sat stiffly at the signing table for her book launch, the cover of Beneath the Western Sky gleaming beneath the overhead lights. She smiled for cameras, scribbled notes to readers, posed beside fans who called her brave and brilliant, none of them knowing the storm she was quietly surviving. A girl no older than 16 stood before her, gripping a copy of the book. "Miss Camille, this story. It's about your life, isn't it?" she asked, eyes wide with admiration. "Did you really fall in love with a man who turned out to be your enemy?" Camille's heart ached. She forced a smile. "Sometimes life doesn't go the way we plan, but we find our strength in unexpected places." That answer satisfied the girl, but not Camille. She couldn't lie to herself anymore. When the event ended, she sat alone backstage, lost in thought. That's when she saw him, Adrian, standing just beyond the curtain. He looked rougher than she remembered. His hair was longer, his jaw more defined, his eyes shadowed with something unreadable. But when their eyes met, something inside her broke. She didn't speak. She just walked to him, slow and trembling, until they stood only inches apart. "I read your book," Adrian said. "It nearly tore me apart." Camille swallowed, emotion burning her throat. "I didn't know how else to explain." "You should have told me," he whispered. "You should have let me fight for you." "I was scared," she admitted. "I still am." He reached up, brushing a stray curl from her cheek. Did he hurt you? She hesitated. Yes. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he didn't press further. She took a shaky breath. I'm pregnant. His hand fell to his side. Is it? I don't know, she said honestly. It could be his. It could be yours. Silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Then Adrian stepped forward, gently taking her hand. I don't care whose it is, he said. If you'll let me, I want to raise this child with you. I want to be the man who earns your trust again. Slowly, honestly, not because of guilt, but because I love you. Tears slipped down Camille's face. She nodded once, unable to speak. A week later, they returned to the ranch together. Aunt Jolene cried when she saw Camille, holding her like a mother would. Uncle Raul clapped Adrian on the back, no words needed. Nolan was gone. He had left a note and disappeared. No forwarding address, no explanation. And maybe that was for the best. Camille spent her pregnancy surrounded by quiet love, not grand gestures, but the kind that built slowly. Adrian cooking her meals, reading by her bedside, holding her when nightmares came. When their daughter was born, they named her Hope. Because somehow, in spite of everything, that's what remained. Sometimes, life takes us through storms we never imagined. Betrayals, heartbreak, unexpected turns that leave us questioning everything we thought we knew. Camille's story reminds us that strength isn't always about standing tall, but about surviving when the ground beneath us crumbles. She lost her voice, her sense of safety, and nearly her hope. But even through the pain, she found resilience. She found a reason to heal, not just for herself, but for the new life growing inside her. Adrian's love, while imperfect, teaches us that real love isn't about possession or pride. It's about patience, redemption, and the courage to show up even after everything's gone wrong. He didn't erase Camille's scars, but he gave her a safe space to grow past them. And that's what love should be. A place where healing begins, not where pain is buried. This story shows us the difference between love that controls and love that restores. It reminds us to listen, to protect, to believe survivors, and most importantly, to never let fear or shame silence us. Because even after our darkest chapters, there is still hope. There is still a future waiting to be written. What about you? Where are you watching from today? I'd love to know. If this story moved you, please give the video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We have many more powerful stories coming your way, and you won't want to miss them. Thank you for being here. Your support means everything.